Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to being well-informed. We dig into complex research, pull together different sources, and give you the most surprising and useful takeaways.
And today, we are really diving deep. We're looking at the core of human behavior, why we do what we do, why change is so hard, and, well, why getting a grip on our own lives can feel so tricky.
Exactly. We've got a stack of sources today, real heavy hitters from psychology. We're talking Festinger on cognitive dissonance, Skinner on behavior, but also, modern stuff on habits, attachment, even neurobiology.
Right. This isn't just theory floating in the clouds. Think of it as finding the hidden instruction manual for yourself.
Okay, let's get into it. Our mission here is to go way past just observing behavior, the what, and really understand the machinery underneath. How does it all work? We've broken it down into three main parts for you.
First up, internal consistency and bias. That powerful, sometimes problematic need we have to make everything fit together in our heads.
Then, second, the architecture of change. This is where we look at habits, identity. How do we actually build new ways of being?
And finally, part three, the science of connection and conflict. Looking at relationships, both with others and maybe even within ourselves.
Our goal, to pull all these threads together so you can stop fighting against your own wiring and maybe start, designing things with it instead.
Let's jump in.
Okay, so we kind of have to start with Leon Festinger, right? Cognitive dissonance. It's this fundamental idea in social psychology.
Absolutely fundamental. The core idea is simple, but incredibly powerful. When your beliefs clash, or when what you believe clashes with what you do, it creates this discomfort, this dissonance.
And nobody likes feeling that discomfort.
Nobody. It's mentally grating. So we instinctively, immediately try to get rid of it.
Yeah.
That scramble to reduce dissonance. That explains a lot of what looks like irrational behavior from the outside.
You mentioned Festinger's famous experiment, the
Yeah.
one with paying people to lie.
Ah, yeah, the classic $1 versus $20 study. It shows the mechanism perfectly. People did a super boring task, then were asked to tell the next person it was actually fun. Some got paid $20, others just $1.
Okay.
The $20 group, they knew why they lied. $20 was decent money back then. They had clear external justification, no big dissonance problem.
But the $1 group.
Exactly, $1, that's like nothing. Not enough external reason to lie. So their minds had to resolve the dissonance. I said it was fun, but I barely got paid. Maybe it was kind of fun after all. They changed their internal belief to match their action.
Wow. So the lack of external reason forced an internal change.
Precisely. And the amount of dissonance you feel, which dictates how hard you'll work to rationalize, isn't random either. It depends on a couple of things.
Like what?
One is simply how important the decision is. Buying a coffee versus choosing a career path, obviously different levels of potential dissonance.
Makes sense.
And the other key factor, maybe even more important, is the attractiveness of the option you didn't choose.
Ah, okay. So if you turn down a really great job offer for another pretty good one.
You're going to experience more dissonance than if the rejected offer was terrible. And you'll likely spend a lot of mental energy afterwards convincing yourself why the job you turned down actually had hidden flaws you didn't see before.
Right. We start editing reality after the fact. And there are specific ways we do this, aren't there? It's not just a vague feeling.
Oh, yeah. The sources lay out specific tactics our minds use. The first is what we just talked about, changing how you think about the alternatives. Psychologists call it the spread of alternatives.
It's a spread of alternatives.
You basically mentally enhance the positives of your choice and downplay its negatives. Simultaneously, you do the reverse for the option you rejected. You amplify its negatives and minimize its positives.
So you rewrite the story to make your choice seem like the obviously superior one.
Exactly. It makes you feel better, more consistent. We all do it, probably more than we realize. Rationalizing a big purchase, justifying staying in a relationship. It's a comfort mechanism.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. What's the second method?
The second one is finding cognitive overlap. If you hold two ideas that seem contradictory, your brain will hunt for common ground, for similarities, to sort of blur the edges of the conflict.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. Let's say you see yourself as someone who really cares about the environment, but you also maybe drive a big SUV that's not great on gas.
Okay. Definite potential for dissonance there.
Right. So to reduce that discomfort, you might focus heavily on other green things you do. Maybe you're meticulous about recycling, or you buy organic food. You find overlap in the broader category of, say, being a responsible person, to make the specific contradiction about the car feel less jarring.
Ah, okay. You connect them under a bigger umbrella idea.
Precisely. It lessens the sting.
Okay, this is where it gets really, really interesting for someone trying to be well-informed, like our listeners. Dissonance isn't just about looking backward at choices. It actually shapes what information we even let in.
Yes, this is crucial. It acts like a filter, the dissonance filter. Because dissonance feels bad, we are strongly motivated to seek out information that confirms what we already believe or have already chosen. It feels validating, comfortable.
And conversely,
Conversely, we tend to actively avoid information that challenges our beliefs or choices because that would just create more dissonance. Sometimes this avoidance is conscious, sometimes it's completely unconscious. It's a huge driver of confirmation bias and those echo chambers we hear so much about.
that's a huge insight. Let's make that really practical. Say you're in a big meeting at work. Everyone's gung-ho about a new project, pouring resources into it. But you, internally, you have serious doubts. You think it's flawed.
Okay. High potential for dissonance. Your belief, this project is flawed, clashes with the group's actions in apparent consensus.
So what does the dissonance filter predict I'll do?
Well, the discomfort will likely push you, not towards objectively weighing the pros and cons presented in the meeting, but towards seeking out anything that validates your doubts. You might subtly look for allies who also seem skeptical, or you might later selectively remember only the parts of the discussion that seemed weak, reinforcing your initial stance.
So the priority becomes reducing my own internal discomfort rather than finding the objective truth of the situation.
In that moment, often, yes. Comfort over correctness. It's a powerful bias.
And this natural tendency, this need for consistency, it makes us suggestible, doesn't it? Which brings us to Robert Cialdini's work on persuasion.
Exactly. Cialdini connects dissonance directly to influence. His principle of commitment and consistency hinges entirely on this. Persuaders can leverage our need to be consistent to get us to comply with requests.
How does that work? What's the technique?
The classic example is the foot in the door technique. It starts small. Maybe someone asks you to sign a petition for a cause, or wear a tiny lapel pin, or answer a quick survey.
Seems harmless enough.
Right. But the persuader isn't really interested in your signature or you wearing the pin. They're interested in shifting your self-perception. Once you've performed that small, seemingly insignificant action, you subtly start to label yourself. I signed that petition about saving the whales. I guess I'm the kind of person who cares about environmental issues.
Ah, you've made a small commitment and now you see yourself in a slightly new way.
Precisely. You've created a new piece of your identity. And then when the persuader comes back later with a much larger request that aligns with that new self-image, like asking for a significant donation to the whale fund or asking you to volunteer your weekend, you feel an internal pressure to comply.
Because saying no would create dissonance. It would contradict this new view of yourself as an environmentally conscious person.
Exactly. You comply not necessarily because the new request is compelling on its own, but because you need to remain consistent with the identity you adopted after that first small step. It's quite clever, really.
Okay, so if that drive for consistency often pulls us back towards our existing beliefs and behaviors, how do we actually change intentionally? How do we move forward? We often focus on goals, on outcomes.
Right, I want to lose weight, I want to write a novel.
Yeah.
We focus on the what. But James Clear, in his work on habits, argues this is fundamentally the wrong approach for lasting change.
What's his argument?
He says true behavior change isn't about motivation or willpower. Not really. It's about identity change. The focus needs to shift from the outcome level to the identity level.
Okay, unpack that. Outcome versus identity.
So instead of I want to lose 20 pounds, outcome, the focus becomes I want to become the type of person who is healthy and active, identity.
Yeah.
Instead of I want to read 20 books this year, outcome, it's I want to become a reader.
Ah, I see. So the actions then become expressions of that identity rather than chores to reach a goal.
Exactly. If your goal is just the outcome, what happens when you achieve it? You often stop the behaviors. But if your goal is to embody an identity, the behaviors become automatic affirmations of who you are. Every workout isn't just about burning calories. It's a vote you're casting for being a fed person. Every page read is a vote for being a reader.
That framing is really powerful. Improvements are only temporary until they become part of who you are. If that underlying identity doesn't shift, you're just kind of forcing it and it won't stick.
That's the core idea. It only becomes truly effortless, truly sustainable when it's integrated into your self-concept.
So how do we actually do that? How do we facilitate that identity shift in a practical way?
Well, one of the most potent tools, according to Clear and others, is leveraging our environment. Our physical surroundings often have a much bigger impact on our behavior than our conscious intentions or willpower.
Really? More than willpower? That sounds almost too simple. Is there evidence for that?
Oh, it's not just anecdotal. It's rooted in our neurobiology.
Huh.
Think about our senses. How many do we have? Five basic ones, right?
Yeah.
But the input isn't equal.
Okay.
Out of all the sensory receptors in your body, estimates are around 11 million. A staggering 10 million are dedicated just to vision.
Like 10 million for sight alone.
Yep. And some estimates suggest up to half of your brain's total resources are used for processing visual information. We are overwhelmingly visual creatures.
Wow. Okay, so if half my brain power is dedicated to seeing.
Then what you see has an enormous, often unconscious influence on what you do. Your brain is wired to respond to visual cues much more readily than abstract intentions.
So that makes the idea of designing your environment really concrete. It's not just about tidying up.
Not at all. It's about strategically placing cues for your desired behaviors, making them obvious and easy, while simultaneously removing cues for undesired behaviors.
Give me some examples.
Okay, if you want to practice guitar more often, identity, become a musician. Don't keep the guitar hidden in its case in the closet. Put it on a stand right in the middle of your living room where you see it constantly. That visual cue prompts the action.
Right. Makes the desired action the path of least resistance.
Exactly. And conversely, if you want to, say, eat less junk food,
Hmm.
identity,
Hmm.
become a healthy eater, don't leave cookies out on the counter. Hide them away. Make them invisible, inconvenient. Make the healthy snacks the obvious, visible choice.
A small change in what you see leads to a big shift in what you do.
That's the principle. Be ruthless about it. Fill your environment with productive cues that align with the identity you want to build, and actively eliminate the unproductive ones that trigger your old self. Make the good habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, and the bad habits invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying.
Okay, but maintaining this. It's easy to let things slide, right? The cues disappear, the identity fades. How do you prevent that drift?
That's where structured reflection comes in. The sources emphasize the importance of periodic reviews. Call it an annual review, an integrity report, whatever works for you. It's about deliberately checking in.
Why is that necessary if the habits are set up?
Because life happens. We get busy. Priorities shift. Environments change subtly. Without intentional check-ins, you can experience this gradual slide away from your intended path without even realizing it. This periodic review acts as a course correction mechanism. It forces you to pause the doing and check the compass.
Okay, so what does that kind of review actually look like? What's the structure? If someone listening wants to try this, what are the steps?
A good structure, like the integrity report idea, focuses on three key things. First, define or reaffirm your core values. What principles are most important to you? What kind of person are you actually striving to be? Get specific.
Step 1, values. Got it.
Step 2, assess your current alignment. Honestly, how are your recent actions, decisions, maybe even how you spend your time and money, lining up with those stated values?
Yeah.
Where is there integrity and where is there a gap? This needs brutal honesty. Look at the data if you can.
Okay, honest assessment. That sounds potentially uncomfortable.
It can be. That's the point. It's like dissonance, but you're using it constructively.
Yeah.
Then, step 3, set a higher standard for the future. Based on that assessment, what are one or two specific, tangible actions you commit to taking in the next period, the next week, month, quarter, to close that gap and align more closely with your desired identity and values?
Values, alignment, future actions.
Exactly. Just dedicating a few focused hours to this process periodically forces you to confront any drift and consciously steer back towards the person you intend to be.
This idea of self-assessment, checking alignment with who we want to be, leads us straight into how we evaluate ourselves internally. And here, there's a really important distinction the sources draw, particularly Kristen Neff's work, between self-esteem and self-compassion.
Yes, this is a major point. For decades, we've been told high self-esteem is the key to happiness and success. Build your self-esteem.
Right. It feels like a cornerstone of popular psychology. So what's the problem? Why is Neff critical of it?
The problem lies in how self-esteem is typically defined and achieved. It's fundamentally an evaluation, a judgment of your self-worth. And crucially, it's often based on feeling special and above average.
Okay. I can see the issue there. Not everyone can be above average.
Exactly. It's logically impossible. So the pursuit of high self-esteem, defined this way, automatically puts you in competition with others. It fuels social comparison. Am I smarter, more successful, better looking, more popular?
And that constant comparison can be exhausting and maybe even damaging.
Potentially, yes. Neff argues it can lead to some pretty nasty behavior. If your self-worth depends on feeling superior, you might resort to putting others down through bullying, prejudice, relational aggression, just to maintain that fragile sense of being better than. Your ego becomes very brittle.
So self-esteem in this light is kind of conditional and comparative. What's the alternative? Self-compassion?
Self-compassion is presented as a healthier, more stable foundation. It's not an evaluation or judgment. It's radical self-acceptance. It means treating yourself with the same kindness, care, and understanding you would offer a good friend, especially when you fail or feel inadequate.
So it's not about letting yourself off the hook for everything.
Not at all. It's about recognizing that imperfection, failure, and suffering are part of the shared human experience. Everyone struggles. Self-compassion means stopping the relentless striving to be perfect or superior, and instead offering yourself warmth and understanding in the face of your flaws. It allows for growth from a place of kindness, not harsh self-criticism.
Accepting yourself, flaws and all, rather than constantly judging yourself against others or some impossible ideal.
Precisely. It fosters resilience because your self-worth isn't constantly on the line, fluctuating with every success or failure.
Okay, so if we stop the harsh external judgment tied to self-esteem, we also need to look at harsh internal judgment patterns. This links directly to Martin Seligman's work on explanatory styles and rumination.
Yes, rumination.
Yeah.
That tendency to just chew on things mentally. Going over and over a problem, a mistake, a negative feeling, analyzing it endlessly without actually moving towards a solution.
Like getting stuck in a mental loop.
Exactly. And Seligman found that when this habit of rumination combines with what he calls a pessimistic explanatory style, it becomes a potent recipe for severe depression.
Pessimistic explanatory style. What does that mean specifically?
It's how you habitually explain bad events to yourself. A pessimistic style attributes bad events to causes that are 1, permanent, this bad thing will last forever, I'll always fail at this. 2, pervasive, this failure ruins everything in my life. And 3, personal, this is all my fault, there's something fundamentally wrong with me.
Permanent, pervasive, personal. That sounds like a really debilitating way to view setbacks.
It is. It turns a specific, temporary problem into a global, enduring statement about your inadequacy. An optimistic style, in contrast, tends to see bad events as temporary, specific, and often due to external or changeable factors.
And you mentioned rumination. The sources also noted a gender difference here.
Yes, there's some evidence suggesting a pattern. When faced with feeling down or stressed, men, on average, tend more towards action or distraction, doing something, trying to fix it, or just avoiding thinking about it. Women, again on average, show a higher tendency towards rumination, thinking deeply about their feelings, analyzing the causes, mulling over the implications.
And that internal focus, while perhaps aimed at understanding, can actually prolong the negative state.
That's the risk Seligman points out. The excessive chewing over the problem, especially with that pessimistic lens, can dig the hole deeper rather than helping you climb out. Interrupting that rumination cycle is key.
Okay, so interrupting rumination, managing these difficult internal states. We often think the answer is logic, just think your way out of it. But the sources seem to argue that emotion often trumps logic in driving our actual behavior.
Absolutely. This is a critical point. We like to think we're rational creatures, acting on what we know is best in the long run. But the reality, much of the time, is that we act based on what feels safest, or easiest, or most immediately relieving right now.
Emotion drives the bus, even if logic is yelling directions from the backseat.
That's a good way to put it. When our emotions are heightened, when our nervous system feels threatened or overwhelmed, our capacity for logical thought, planning, and impulse control diminishes. Short-term emotional relief often wins out over long-term values or goals.
Like snapping at someone when stressed, even though you know it damages the relationship, or procrastinating on a task because it feels overwhelming right now.
Exactly. But the good news is, this connection works both ways. When you can regulate the emotion, when you calm the nervous system first, then your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain, comes back online. Logic, perspective, and effective decision-making become accessible again.
So emotional regulation isn't just about feeling better, it's about thinking better too, which leads us to a practical technique mentioned, the 90-second reset.
Yes, this is a great actionable tool based on the idea that the actual physiological lifespan of an emotion person, the chemical rush in your body, like adrenaline or cortisol, is often quite short, maybe only 60 to 90 seconds.
So the initial wave is brief, even if the psychological story we attach to it lasts longer.
Precisely. If you can learn to recognize that initial physiological surge, and consciously write it out without reacting impulsively, you can often prevent the emotion from hijacking your behavior.
Okay, how does someone actually do this 90-second reset in the heat of the moment? Say you get an infuriating email or someone cuts you off in traffic.
It takes practice, definitely awareness. The steps are roughly. First, name the feeling. Just mentally label it. Ah, this is anger, or, okay, feeling overwhelmed. Labeling itself engages the thinking brain.
Step 1, name it.
Second, locate it in your body. Where do you physically feel the emotion? Tension in your shoulders, a knot in your stomach, heat in your face. Shift focus from the story about the feeling to the raw sensation.
Step 2, locate the sensation.
Third, breathe slowly and deliberately into that area where you feel the sensation. Take maybe 6 to 10 slow, deep breaths, focusing your attention entirely on the physical act of breathing and the sensation. This signals safety to your nervous system.
Step 3, breathe into it.
And finally, fourth, once the initial intensity has hopefully subsided a bit, take the smallest possible action that aligns with your values or your desired identity, something you can complete in under 2 minutes.
Smallest values-aligned action. Like what?
It depends on the situation. If you're overwhelmed by work, maybe just open the document you need to work on. If you're angry with someone, maybe draft one sentence of a calm response, even if you don't send it yet. Don't try to solve the whole problem. Just take one tiny step forward.
Name it, locate it, breathe into it, small action. That sequence seems designed to interrupt the reactive cycle and bring conscious choice back online.
That's exactly the goal. Regulate first, then act intentionally.
Okay, let's shift our focus outward now to relationships. These can feel like the most emotionally chaotic and unpredictable parts of our lives. But attachment theory, especially as presented by Levine and Heller, offers a surprisingly logical framework for understanding them.
It really does. Attachment theory, which started with John Bowlby studying infants and caregivers, proposes that our need for secure connection with a primary partner is a deep-seated biological imperative. It's wired into our nervous systems for survival.
So it's not just a preference, it's a fundamental need, like food or shelter.
From an attachment perspective, yes. And when that sense of secure connection feels threatened, our attachment system activates to try and restore safety and proximity. This explains a lot of behaviors that might otherwise seem irrational or maybe needy.
You mean things like protest behavior?
Exactly. Things like calling your partner repeatedly when they don't answer, trying to make them jealous, withdrawing angrily, or becoming overly demanding of reassurance. These aren't necessarily signs of immaturity or pathology. From an attachment lens, they are predictable, understandable attempts by someone with an anxious attachment style to reconnect when they perceive distance or unavailability from their partner. It's the attachment system sounding the alarm.
That reframes clinginess quite dramatically. It's an activated safety system. What about the other common style, the avoidant style? They often seem like the opposite, fiercely independent, uncomfortable with closeness.
Right. People with an avoidant attachment style tend to use deactivating strategies. They learn, often early in life, to suppress their attachment needs and emphasize self-reliance. They might downplay the importance of relationships, focus on minor flaws in their partner, or equate intimacy with a loss of freedom.
So they build this narrative of being a free spirit who doesn't really need anyone that close.
Pretty much. They often develop a kind of defensive self-esteem, seeing themselves as strong and independent compared to partners they might perceive as needy or demanding. It's a way to manage the underlying vulnerability associated with connection. Interestingly, avoidants rarely form long-term relationships with other avoidants. There's no one to feel independent in comparison to.
So that independence is more of a protective shield than a genuine lack of need for connection. Does that shield ever break down?
Oh, absolutely. Their attachment system is still there, just suppressed. Under significant stress, think major life events like a serious illness, job loss, divorce, maybe even the birth of a child, those deactivating defenses can crumble. When their mental resources are overwhelmed, their underlying attachment needs can surge to the surface, and they might suddenly crave closeness and reassurance, looking much more like someone with an anxious style.
Wow. So the underlying wiring is still there, it just takes a lot to activate it openly.
Exactly. Understanding these styles, anxious, avoidant, and secure, isn't about labeling people, but about understanding the predictable dynamics and needs that arise in relationships.
And knowing this, what's the key to better communication? How do you move beyond protest behavior or defensive distancing?
The sources really emphasize authentic expression of needs. Instead of resorting to protest behaviors, which push partners away, or suppression, which breeds resentment, the goal is effective communication. That means learning to identify your actual relational needs for reassurance, for space, for quality time, and expressing them directly and respectfully.
So instead of getting angry and withdrawn because your partner is late, saying something like, hey, when you're late and don't let me know, I start to feel anxious. Could you try to text me next time?
Precisely. It feels vulnerable, but it's far more effective. It gives your partner clear information about how to meet your needs, and it allows you to gauge whether they are actually willing and able to do so. Hiding your needs just prevents real connection and can keep you stuck in unsatisfying dynamics.
This connects really well to the work of John Gottman on bids for connection, doesn't it? Those small, everyday moments.
Absolutely. Gottman's research highlighted that strong relationships aren't just built on grand gestures. They're built on the consistent handling of tiny, seemingly insignificant moments, the bids.
What counts as a bid?
It could be almost anything: a sigh, a comment about the weather, pointing something out, asking a simple question, sharing a brief thought. Each one is a small attempt to connect, seeking attention, affirmation, or support from the partner.
And Gottman found that couples basically do one of two things with these bids.
Right. They either turn toward the bid or turn away. Turning toward means acknowledging the bid, maybe just with eye contact, a nod, a brief comment like, uh-huh, or that's interesting. It signals, I hear you, you matter.
And turning away.
Turning away is ignoring the bid, dismissing it, or responding with irritation or hostility. Consistently turning away, Gottman found, is incredibly corrosive. It breeds loneliness, resentment, and eventually contempt. Turning toward bids, even briefly, builds emotional capital, trust, and affection, the foundation of a strong relational friendship.
The sources mention a pro move related to this, something about timing.
Yeah, the suggestion is to try and notice even the smallest bids from your partner and respond, even minimally, within about 60 seconds.
Right.
It doesn't have to derail what you're doing, but that quick acknowledgement reinforces the connection and security. It says, I'm here, I'm responsive.
It's like keeping the emotional bank account topped up with small, regular deposits.
Exactly. Those small moments accumulate powerfully over time.
Okay, shifting from intimate relationships to broader decision-making in society. We see a similar kind of calculation when people make choices. This brings up the fascinating distinction between maximizers and satisficers.
Yes, Herbert Simon's concept, later explored by Barry Schwartz. This is about decision-making styles. Maximizers are people who always strive to make the absolute best possible choice. They need to know they've examined every option and picked the optimal one.
So they do exhaustive research before buying anything, or agonize over which career path is truly the best.
You got it. They might spend hours comparing specs on electronics, read every single review, maybe create spreadsheets. They want to ensure they haven't missed out on something better.
And satisficers.
Satisficers have a different approach. They have a set of criteria, a standard for what's good enough. They search for options until they find one that meets their criteria, and then they stop searching. They choose the good enough option and move on.
Logically, you'd think maximizing leads to better outcomes and more happiness, right? Getting the best.
You'd think so. But the research consistently shows the opposite. Maximizers tend to be less happy with their choices, experience more regret, and are more prone to second-guessing and even depression.
Why is that? Why does striving for the best backfire psychologically?
A few reasons. One is the sheer effort and stress involved in trying to evaluate all possible options, especially in a world with overwhelming choice. But a bigger reason is social comparison. To know if something is the best, you almost inevitably have to compare it to what others have or what else is out there.
So they're constantly measuring against external benchmarks.
Exactly, which makes them perpetually vulnerable to feeling like they missed out or that someone else got a slightly better deal or outcome. Satisficers, on the other hand, tend to be happier because their standard is internal. Does this meet my needs? Once that's met, they're content. They have more autonomy from that constant comparison game.
Their standard is absolute, not relative.
Well put. And related to this is the psychological burden of opportunity cost. Every choice you make means not choosing all the other potential options. The more options you consider, like a maximizer does, the more opportunity costs you rack up in your mind all the potential benefits of the rejected options.
And thinking about what you missed out on increases regret.
Absolutely. It increases both anticipated regret before the decision, what if I picked the wrong one, and post-decision regret afterwards. Maybe I should have chosen that other one. The sheer abundance of choice in modern life makes this particularly hard for maximizers.
Okay, we've looked at internal consistency, identity shifts, emotional regulation, relationships, decision styles. Let's pull back now and consider the big question of control itself. Where does our behavior actually come from? B.S. Skinner offered a pretty stark perspective on this.
He really did. Skinner contrasted what he called the traditional pre-scientific view of behavior with the scientific view. The traditional view relies on the concept of the autonomous man,
Autonomous man,
meaning an inner, free agent, a self, a consciousness, a will that spontaneously initiates behavior. In this view, this inner agent gets the credit when things go well. She has great willpower. And the blame when things go wrong. He lacks self-control.
that sounds pretty much like how most of us think about ourselves, doesn't it?
It's the intuitive view, for sure. But Skinner argued it's scientifically problematic. If behavior just springs spontaneously from some unknowable inner agent, how can you predict it? How can you change it? Autonomous man, by definition, isn't easily influenced by external factors.
So what was Skinner's scientific alternative? If it's not the autonomous man pulling the levers, what is?
Skinner attributed behavior primarily to two factors: our genetic endowment and, crucially, our environmental history and current circumstances. He talked about contingencies of reinforcement, basically, how the consequences of our past actions in particular environments shape our current behavior. Behavior is selected by the environment, not freely chosen by an inner self.
Okay, that has really profound implications, especially for someone trying to change.
Huge implications. If you believe your failures are due to a faulty, autonomous man, lack of willpower, bad character, you're likely to feel guilty and helpless. Because how do you fix that inner self? But if you believe behavior is shaped by the environment,
Then you can change the behavior by changing the environment.
exactly, that offers a practical, tangible path forward. You shift the focus from blaming some internal, mystical self to analyzing and modifying the external conditions, the cues, the consequences, the context that are actually driving the behavior. Even something like attention, Skinner argued, isn't directed by will. The environment selects what we pay attention to.
So control the context, and you gain control over the behavior. This ties beautifully into the neurobiological perspective, like Stephen Porges's polyvagal theory, which emphasizes how our physiological state, shaped by our environment and history, dictates our capacity to act.
Absolutely. Polyvagal theory provides the how, the neural wiring behind that environmental influence, especially linking back to our early attachment experiences. Porges describes an evolutionary hierarchy of 3 neural circuits that govern our responses to safety and threat.
Right, you mentioned Bowlby earlier. Our internal regulation reflects our early caregiver attunement.
Yes, if our early environment felt consistently safe and responsive, our nervous system develops a robust capacity for self-regulation and social engagement, primarily through the newest circuit, the ventral vagal complex, VVC. This is the myelinated vagus nerve system associated with feeling calm, connected, and safe.
Okay, the VVC is the safe and social system. What are the others?
Below that, evolutionarily older, is the sympathetic nervous system. That's our mobilization circuit, fight or flight. It activates when we perceive danger, preparing us to confront or escape the threat.
Standard stress response. And the oldest system.
The oldest is the dorsal vagal complex, DVC. This is the unmyelinated vagus, our most primitive response circuit. When fight or flight isn't possible or doesn't work, or the threat feels overwhelming, the DVC kicks in with immobilization, freezing, shutting down, dissociating. Think playing dead.
And this framework helps explain trauma responses.
Immensely. Traumatic symptoms like chronic hypervigilance, feeling numb or disconnected, flashbacks, helplessness can be understood as the nervous system getting stuck in these survival states, either locked on in sympathetic arousal or locked off in dorsal shutdown, or sometimes cycling between them. The body is still perceiving threat even when the external danger has passed.
So it's fundamentally physiological, not just a mind problem.
Exactly. It's the nervous system frozen in an unresolved survival response. Which means that healing, according to this model, requires more than just talking about the trauma. It requires working directly with the body.
Accessing the felt sense, the physical sensations.
Precisely. Because the DVC and sympathetic systems operate at a more primitive, nonverbal level, the reptilian brain level, we need to use the language they understand. Sensation, breath, movement. Healing involves techniques that help the nervous system experience safety in the present moment, allowing it to discharge that stored survival energy and gradually return to regulation through the VVC, the safe and social system. You have to signal safety to the body, not just convince the mind. #tag outro.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping this huge deep dive up, what have we learned? It seems we're constantly navigating this tension between our deep-seated need for consistency, which can trap us, and our desire for change.
Right. We've seen that cognitive dissonance drives us to rationalize, that real change often means shifting identity, not just actions, and that our environment, especially visual cues, plays a massive role in that.
And internally, choosing self-compassion over the shaky ladder of self-esteem seems crucial, as does learning to regulate our emotions physically, like with that 90-second reset before logic can even get a word in.
And externally, understanding attachment styles and responding to those small bids for connection can transform relationships, while recognizing our decision-making style, maximizer or satisficer, impacts our happiness with our choices.
It really paints a picture of us as beings deeply influenced by context, by our evolutionary wiring, by our history, far more than that idea of the purely rational, autonomous man would suggest.
And that leads to, I think, the most provocative takeaway from synthesizing all these sources. We consistently overestimate our own rationality. Our irrational behaviors, whether it's confirmation bias driven by dissonance, or the paralysis of choice felt by a maximizer, or getting stuck in fight, flight, freeze, these aren't random flaws. They are systematic and predictable consequences of how our brains and nervous systems are built.
Okay, so if our irrationality is predictable, what's the ultimate paradigm shift for someone listening who wants to flourish?
I think the biggest shift is moving from self-blame to systems design. If our errors are predictable, then the path to a better life isn't necessarily about achieving perfect self-control or eliminating all our flaws that might be impossible. Instead, it's about recognizing these predictable patterns in ourselves and others, and then intentionally designing our lives, our habits, our environments, our relationships, our decision-making processes in ways that limit the damage these predictable errors can cause.
So instead of trying to become a different kind of human, we work with our human nature by building better systems around it.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging the machinery, understanding its quirks, and then building guardrails, prompts, and structures that make it easier to act in line with our deeper values and goals. That shift in perspective from blaming the self to engineering the context, that's where lasting change and genuine flourishing can really begin.
Design your environment, understand your patterns, practice self-compassion, turn towards those bids, and maybe aim for good enough more often. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.